My name is Amelia Hart. I married a man I loved, but the house keys I handed him unlocked a secret life. He was never attracted to me. He was attracted to men, and every smile he gave hid the money he stole to build someone else's world. When we married, it felt like the whole city paused. Our wedding was small, only the people who mattered, but the life we'd promised each other felt huge. An apartment on a high floor with glass walls that drank sunlight, weekends at the coast, a dinner table that never went cold. My name is Amelia Hart. I'm 32, and I've always believed in doing things properly. My career had given me enough to be comfortable. His charm made me feel lucky. He called himself Nathan. I called him home. What I didn't know was that home was built around an illusion. He worked nights for a retailer when we met, then somehow rose through a couple of promotions, and suddenly there were better suits in the wardrobe and a watch to match. He shrugged off questions about bonuses or clients. "It's just work," he'd say, tucking hair behind my ear with a practiced tenderness. He was affectionate in small doses. The right laugh at the right joke, the hand that rested on my shoulder at dinners. People told me we were enviable. I started dreaming in gold leaf without realizing the gold might not be ours to keep. We wanted children. I wanted a tiny hand wrapped around my finger, a voice that called me Mama. Every time I mentioned starting the family, he'd touch my face and say, "Soon. We'll wait until you're ready." But soon stretched like a rubber band and always snapped back. Months passed. I learned to bite my tongue when the ache tightened in my chest, convincing myself careers, timing, stress, it all made sense. Love requires patience, I told myself. It was what I told every anxious night. Then came a single evening that looked like any other. A quiet meal, a dim lamp, and a calm Nathan. He kissed me goodnight and left for inventory checks. He never came back before dawn. His phone buzzed in the coat, a small, steady glow I tried not to notice. But the first time a voice on that screen made me uneasy. I dismissed it. The second time, I sat up and listened. The third time, I began to worry. What I didn't know yet, his late nights weren't about clients. They were about another life, one that spent an increasing amount of our money to protect itself. I told myself I was being paranoid when I asked my friend Hannah to check something small. Hannah and I had met at a networking brunch. She now worked as a marketing consultant and owed me favors. I called it curiosity, she called it sleuthing. "You want me to do what exactly?" She laughed, but I could hear the gear shift in her voice, the same one that meant she was already on it. She started as friends do, a few coffee meetups, an innocuous question about Nathan's new business lunches. Hannah's texts came in code, screenshots of LinkedIn profiles, a blurred invite to a networking event he'd never mentioned. One night, she sent a picture that made my stomach fall. Nathan, in a suit I'd only seen twice, entering a private hotel through a side entrance. The timestamp didn't match any retail visit he'd reported. I confronted him gently, the way a spouse tests a small crack in a vase. "Who were you with at the Westbridge?" I asked, trying to sound amused. He smiled, the smile that had soothed me through every hard night. "Oh, that was an old colleague. We were catching up. You worried too much, Em." He kissed my forehead. That kiss had become armor. It felt like an apology and a closing of the book. But the book was not closed. Hannah dug deeper. She found charges on our joint card that traced to faraway cities, boutique hotels, luxury dinners, couples retreats. Each payment was small enough to explain away, a dinner here, a bottle of wine there, but the pattern grew like a bruise. The bank argument was worse. Transfers labeled as consultation fees that I'd never authorized. Nathan laughed when I showed him the list. "You don't know finance," he said. "I handle it. Trust me." Trust is a furniture you stop checking until it collapses. I wanted to believe him, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Meanwhile, Hannah set a different trap. She planted a casual question in an online forum to see if anyone recognized a username connected to Nathan's email. And someone did. Within 48 hours, she messaged one line that froze me. He's listed on Grindr under Nate Reds, several profiles, 2 with the same ringed scar on his palm. I stared at the screen as if at a mirror I didn't recognize. I didn't want that truth. What I did want was the life we'd planned. Baby names, Sunday breakfasts, tiny shoes by the door. The world narrowed to one awful possibility. Nathan wasn't refusing me for reasons of timing. He might be refusing me because of who he loved. The photo Hannah sent that night was a drop of acid on paper. Nathan stood near a cliff, arm around a man whose smile fit with the curve of his cheek. The scar on the palm was unmistakable. The man's profile matched a hotel staff photo Hannah dug up. I read and reread the file like a sleepwalker checking a locked door. For days, I did not speak. I watched him across our living room and cataloged small dishonesties. The lies that had worn smooth like coins in a pocket. When I finally broke, I did it in a way a woman does when she has to speak to a wound. I found him in the kitchen, making coffee like nothing was burning. "Who is he?" I said. My voice was flat. He laughed, not with humor, but with the arrogant ease of someone who believed he could rearrange the truth to suit him. "It's not what you think," he started. "We're friends, Amelia. You don't need to make this ugly." He had rehearsed this. Men in the wrong rehearsed excuses. I felt rage, the kind that is clean and precise. "I saw the photos," I said. "I saw the hotel charges. I saw the profile. Tell me one true thing." He avoided my eyes. "I love you," he said finally. The worst movie line he could have offered. I felt as if I had been cut into pieces and asked to assemble myself from the scrap. "You said you wanted children," he muttered. "You said you could wait." His voice sounded smaller than his hands. The shock one expects doesn't arrive like a scene in a film. It arrives in the banal. The way he touched his coffee mug, the way his laugh died in the room. The more he spoke, the more his sentences revealed not justification, but pattern. Furtive nights, coded messages, quiet transfers to accounts I'd never seen named anything I recognized. I wanted to scream, but the scream stayed lodged in me. Instead, I did something quieter and harder. I told Hannah to stop. "Don't give me more," I said. "Just hold it." That night, I went alone into my closet and pulled out the necklace he'd given me the month after our wedding, the one I'd slept with, the one I couldn't let go. I laid it on the dresser like evidence of a crime scene, a relic of my own fancy. But the necklace would not hold him back. He left the next morning saying he needed a break, that he was overwhelmed. His taxi left with no backward glance. I stood at the window and watched him go, the way one watches a tide take something small and personal out to sea. The house behind him echoed. I realized that what had been missing for months wasn't conversation, it was honesty. If love is a private language, money is the quiet grammar that makes the sentences stick. I'd noticed small things. Unaccounted cards, phantom consultants, our savings thinning, but I'd always blamed my foggy accounting. Now the pattern looked less like forgetfulness and more like design. Hannah found the evidence, a web of transfers logged to an account under the name Redline Holdings, a ghost corporation with no apparent business, moving amounts that were both plausible and purposeful. Nathan's defense, when we finally spoke, was a practiced shrug. "It's for investments," he'd say. "A hedge. For us." He used "for us" like a cloak. It let him be small and large at once. We hired a local forensic accountant on Hannah's advice. Discreet, professional. Her name was Maria, and she smelled faintly of strong coffee and unsmiling resolve. Maria traced the trail, Small transfers from our joint accounts to Nathan's card, then larger sums funneled into Redline, which in turn paid for flights, hotel suites, and things labeled as private management. The sum was small enough to avoid immediate alarms in public ledgers, but large enough that over 2 years, it could feed an entire private life, a private store of luxury for someone else. Who else benefits? I asked at one point. Maria was not the sort of woman to indulge in conjecture. Often, the accounts lead to intermediaries, a manager, a boyfriend, someone orchestrating. Sometimes money funds properties under other names. Her voice hardened. If you want this exposed, if you want recovery, legal counsel must act soon. In my chest, a new kind of fury bloomed. Not the raw domestic hurt of betrayal, but the cold anger of having been used as a vault. He had built a second life with money we'd earned together, taken in the half-smile of a man who said, "We'll wait," while he waited on someone else. He'd spent our possibility, my possibility, on satisfying someone else's comforts. I started to plan, not just confrontation, but containment. Freeze the accounts, appoint an independent trustee, get injunctions on property. But each legal step felt like a betrayal of the life I'd once wanted, airing our story in boardrooms and offices rather than soothing a crying baby at 2 a.m. Still, if I wanted children, I needed money, and if I wanted justice, I needed evidence. That night, I did something small and dangerous. I transferred a minimal emergency fund into a private account in my name only, a lockbox for decisions made in light, not darkness. It felt like treachery, and it felt like salvation. Nathan's return was theatrical. A bouquet, a velvet apology, tears he'd never shed for me before. He wanted to reconcile fast, to paper over weeks with trinkets. I let him talk, because his voice would help the camera record the contradictions I needed. Then, in the middle of a dinner with a mutual friend, I placed a printed page on the table, a single invoice showing a transfer labeled Retreat, Redline, and a hotel picture where Nathan was photographed smiling with someone else. Silence is a lever. It can move people if used right. The friend looked between us, then to Nathan. His smile cracked. I watched the color leave his face. He tried to explain, but every word dragged a new thread of evidence with it. I had Maria's summary printouts in my bag, Hannah's screenshots on my phone, the ledger of nights and receipts and excuses. The friend left early, awkward, like someone caught in the wrong film. What surprised me was less the shock than the relief that followed. When the truth sets down on a table, people see differently. The community that once complimented his generosity turned wary. Invitations slowed. Nathan's social orbit thinned as if a magnet had reversed its polarity. But my theater was only beginning. With Maria and a lawyer named Claire, we filed a petition for a temporary restraining order on joint transfers and proposed a temporary trustee over major family accounts, a surgical strike to prevent the vanishing of assets. The bank froze cards. Nathan was furious. He raged and promised the world wilted at the injustice of being corrected. He had one more play, a threat. He said he could reveal embarrassing things about my past, things that could make me look reckless or unstable. Threats are the language of cowards. I recorded him anyway. Men who shout often forget the microphone of truth. His voice, captured in that calm digital file, would be part of the paper trail that defended me. As the courts moved slowly, as courts do, we learned the name of the man who often received the payments. Evan Maris. He wasn't on any of Nathan's social feeds, and yet his signature appeared on contracts that only the learned could parse. He owned properties in a city we'd never visited and had ties to a private concierge service that arranged discreet retreats. Hannah and Liam, a friend from college who owed her favors at a PI firm, drove to one address and found an unmarked townhouse. They took photos of a luxury sedan, a camera angle catching a tattoo on the driver, the same distinctive palm scar. We posted nothing online. We moved quietly.
When Evan's assistant answered at a gated property, they were told he was out of town. The tone was polite and practiced. We realized this was bigger than an affair. It was an arrangement, a system that converted marital income into someone else's life. The man Nathan loved had cultivated a suite of comforts funded by our concessions. Each revelation stacked like a new charge in the indictment we were building. One night, a man arrived at our door. Not my husband. He introduced himself as someone who'd once worked with Evan and wanted out. He had papers, files, and a tremor in his hands. Under the condition of anonymity, he told us this. Evan managed payments that kept certain clients comfortable. He leveraged their status and then reinvested the funds into holdings that shielded true ownership. His network was designed to be invisible. The danger became immediate. We had provable links, but not yet the legal muscle to pry open offshore shells. Claire, our lawyer, advised patience. Don't go public. Don't provoke. Let the probes do their work. We need court orders to compel production. It felt like waiting for an avalanche to begin. Behind every legal delay, money could slip like mercury. Then an email arrived. Simple and cold. Stop or we'll publish. The extortion needle dipped into fear. Someone knew we were close. I felt strangely calm. Threats indicated proximity, and proximity means vulnerability. Ours and theirs. We built the trap like a clockmaker. Claire coordinated with the bank's legal team. Maria supplied the ledger narratives. Hannah handled public optics, and Liam mapped the comings and goings of Evan's circle. We prepared documents that looked ordinary, but were subpoenas in waiting. Claire arranged a quiet deposition under pretense of routine account verification. On the appointed day, Evan's assistant and a representative from the concierge service arrived. We'd ensured a subpoena was ready to be served the moment the right signature fell toward cover. Under legal advisement, the bank agreed to a voluntary review with the expectation that cooperation would be rewarded in court favor. When the assistant handed over a glossy folder, Hannah's hand slipped a camera into a coat pocket. It recorded more than anyone expected. Offhand remarks about allocating shadow shares and a phone number that matched payment logs. The assistant, thinking the room private, made admissions that tied Redline to specific properties. It was not the full chain, but it was a crack. At the same time, Claire filed an emergency motion. The judge, seeing the preliminary materials, signed an order to compel production of accounts tied to Redline and issued freezing orders on several properties. It happened faster than I dared imagine. Overnight, notifications pinged our devices. A legal web closing, suffocating the money's air. Nathan's face when he read the first motion felt like a conclusion in a play. Denial, then disbelief, then a small, shriveled panic. Evan launched a PR flurry, denials, claims of misinformation, a lawyer's statement calling it a disgruntled ex's vendetta. The language was slick, but the documents we had were slicker. The house of cards trembled. I slept poorly that night. The trap had sprung, but traps often make the animal fight. I knew the network would claw. Yet I also knew something else. When light reaches rot, rot is exposed.
Court is not dramatic the way films make it. It's patient bureaucracy. 1,000 small papers accumulating into verdict. But the public hearing, with the judge, the dry legal language, and the stacks of evidence, was a blade that cut. The handwriting expert testified, Maria presented the transaction maps, and a reluctant assistant's recorded offhand comments were played into a courtroom that smelled of coffee and polished wood. People I knew watched from the gallery, their faces small and human. My mother's friends, who'd once called our homes so lovely, sat rigid, eyes landing on me briefly, as if to ask whether I had been cruel or righteous. Nathan took the stand, trying the old gambit: confusion, apology, promises. The prosecutor laid out the pattern in clear sentences. Transfers labeled as management, invoices from companies that provided no service, travel expenses matching dates where Nathan was photographed with Evan. When the judge asked why the account had been drained, Nathan's mouth opened and closed like a trapped fish. He had no plausible story that matched the paper. The judgment was not theatrical. It was statutory. There were fines, restitution, and a legal order that placed these questionable holdings into receivership pending asset recovery. Evan faced charges, or at least civil exposure that would unravel his concealment. The greatest victory was practical. Accounts were frozen, the emergency fund I'd earmarked could be used to secure our future, and the plan to start a family could be considered without fear of an empty bank book. After the trial, people called me bold, others called me cold. I sat in the quiet of our kitchen with a small cup of coffee and considered what to keep. I kept the house, but under a trust with strict oversight. I kept the safe fund I'd moved months ago, and I converted some assets to forms that could not be easily siphoned again. I threw the necklace into a drawer I'd lock and never wear again. What I did not keep was the image of Nathan that had made me believe in forever. He called once, voice small and unrecognizable, and demanded mercy. I realized mercy is often a currency asked of the wrong person. The life I had imagined, the Sunday warnings and the infant cries, was not what I found at the end of this story. What I found was another life. One where I did not depend on another to keep me safe. A year later, on a bright winter morning, I walked into a tiny clinic and filled out forms. There were new names on the list of people I trusted, women who had stood by me through depositions and long nights. I did not call it closure. The wound was real, but I called it a fresh ledger. In courtrooms, in bank ledgers, and in the quiet of my kitchen, I learned that love sometimes has to be defended by law. I learned that secrecy breeds monsters, and that monsters, even the ones in the bed beside you, can be disarmed if you gather proof, allies, and resolve. I didn't get everything back, but I got the right to choose what comes next. And when the house was finally quiet and my phone no longer buzzed with threats, I locked the study and made a list. New goals, new protections, and a small, stubborn hope. The world hadn't given me the child I dreamed of. It had given me the power to live honestly. That would have to be enough.